Welcome to Weekend Crafting Adventures with Kim Wojtalewicz. Get ready to learn all about her latest craft project as she reveals experiences with the Cricut cutting machine. Follow along as she discusses her project's successes and fails, shares her inspiration, tips and tricks, and overall satisfaction rating for each project. Now, here's your host, Kim.
Hi, crafties. Welcome to Weekend Crafting Adventures. I am Kim. I am your host. And today I am super excited to talk to you about my first attempt at making cards on my Cricut Maker machine. Card making is something that is its own craft world. And I have never made a card before, but when I got the inspiration to make my first card on Cricut, which I'll tell you about in a few minutes, I just started looking into the different posts on Pinterest and YouTube about making cards, and I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed at the craft of card making. So I started out this project feeling a bit intimidated, but I am going to tell you, I created 3 cards within a weekend, and it was so much fun. It was so satisfying, and really, it wasn't that hard. I will tell you, my cards that I started with are not complicated. They probably are very simple compared to the expert card makers out there, but that's okay. This is where I started, and I jumped in, and I had the inspiration behind it to get me started. So, talking about the inspiration, I decided to make a thank you card for my first ever card that I made on my Cricut machine. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story behind it, because it really did spark my inspiration and my excitement in giving this a try. I teach preschoolers with autism. I run a program in my school district for preschoolers between the ages of 3 to 5 that not all of them have autism, but a lot of them have challenges in the areas of communication, behavior, play, social interactions. And so that is my love. That is my specialty. And I am lucky enough that in preschool, we get our kids for 2 years. Usually we get them from when they turn 3 to 4, and then we get them again for another year from 4 to 5. So I have been working with a little student, and this is my second year working with him. Our school year's rolling along, coming down to the end, and I was out at recess, and this little guy's mom came to pick up her child, and she asked me if I had a minute. And I said, of course, I've got time for you. So they got their little guy buckled into the car, and then she opened the passenger side of the car and pulled out a bag. And she looked at me and pulled out the most beautiful crocheted hoodie with pockets that I have ever seen. It is a black background with these vibrant colored flowers all over this incredible hoodie. And I just couldn't believe it. She looked at me and just said, thank you for the last 2 years, that she never worried about her little guy when he was with me in class, and that she just appreciated so much what my team and what I had done, not only for him, but the other kids in our program. Well, of course, by now I'm bursting into tears. I'm a hugger. I gave a hug. Not everybody's a hugger. So I'm not sure how well that was received, but I just could not believe that this amazing mom, with everything going on over the last 2 years and, just supporting her own child, took the time to create something so thoughtful and beautiful for me. So I had a really good inspiration for starting to figure out how to use my Cricut Maker to make a thank you card. And so my goal, this was a Friday when she gave me my amazing hoodie, which I will have pictures up on my website and other areas of my social media to show you this gorgeous hoodie that she made me. One more thing before I talk about making the cards is that the thing that she said to me that cracked me up is that she knew she had to give me pockets and a hood because I'm a woman on the move. And that just tickled me because that's true. I work with preschoolers. I work with preschoolers with special needs. I am a woman on the move. So it just caught me and was so thoughtful. Okay. So my inspiration behind this project was this amazing crocheted hoodie. I wanted to find a very unique and special way to thank this mama for thinking of me and creating something beautiful for me. And a card is a simple gesture, but what I loved about figuring out how to make a card on the Cricut Maker was that, and I guess this is a theme for me for making things with my Cricut, is that I can personalize it and make it anything I wanted to. So I knew that I had to find a way to thank her. And I decided to start with looking for a font that represented the kind of sayings and words. I wasn't really sure yet what I wanted, but that had flowers. I wanted to replicate the flowers that she crocheted on the hoodie into my thank you card. So let me talk about the materials that I used and the tools that I used in jumping into this huge arena of card making, but in a very simple way. I chose to use cardstock, a medium weight cardstock. I was looking at a couple of different colors. Again, I'm going to have pictures of the cards that I made, this thank you card, the hoodie, the inspiration behind it up so you can see where I was coming from when I was diving into this project. My light grip Cricut mat to put the cardstock on. I needed my Cricut Ultimate Fine Point pens. I was going to have Cricut right on the card. I felt like starting with a folding card that had some simple flowers and then had a message written with the pens was about as complicated as I wanted to get for my first card. The tools that I used for making this card, my Cricut Design Space, huge tool that I use that's helping me find my fonts that I want. It's helping me know what size of font and to help me find the cut out flowers that I want to put on there. So my Cricut Design Space is huge. I used a mini spatula. I don't know if that's the right term. Will have pictures of it up, but it looks like a tiny spatula. And when I was cutting my flowers out, I did a bunch of different sizes, and some of the little tiny ones I needed to just spatula off, and I didn't want to bend them. I have kind of big clunky hands, so I didn't want to risk bending those little flowers that I'm having cut out of cardstock. So I used that mini spatula. and a ruler. One of the things I kept reading about and seeing in any of the tutorials about making cards was something called a scoring wheel. I do not have a scoring wheel. So I did find a tip, trick, hack that I saw on one of the tutorials I was looking at, where you just take a ruler and you use the edge of the ruler to help do, I guess, what the scoring tool does, which is makes that line for where you're going to fold the card. So I needed a ruler because I don't have a scoring wheel. So the experience of making this card, again, awesome inspiration behind it. I had a couple of whoopsies for sure. The first one was that I picked out a cut file of flowers that were probably 3 different sizes. And I wanted them to be 3 different sizes because I wanted to put on my thank you card a variety of colors, a variety of sizes. I felt like that really was a good representation of the flowers that I had given to me on the hoodie. So some of my flowers came out really small. Again, using that spatula to pop them up. But then I kept thinking to myself, how am I going to get these attached onto the card? I'm going to be using glue. I'm going to be using adhesive. These are pretty small parts. I'm not sure how this is all going to work. So I had to start thinking about what I wanted this card to look like. I decided that I wanted it to be a 5x7 card. I felt like the gift that she gave me was such a gift from the heart that somewhere on the card, I wanted a heart. And I also wanted it to be simple, but to convey my appreciation. So I used my Cricut design space to cut out a 10x7 rectangle. And the first cardstock I chose was light, and it was like a bright, beautiful orange color. And then I knew I wanted to put a pink heart on the outside that said thank you across it. So I had Cricut cut out my rectangle. And then I had Cricut cut out my heart, the pink heart that I was going to put on the outside of the card. I next had Cricut cut out the flowers, and I did a bunch of different colors, but again, I tried to represent the kind of flower that's on the hoodie. So that was really fun. In making this card, everything was going really smoothly. I decided on the inside of the card, I wanted it to say, for your generosity and kindness, because on the outside, on the heart, it said thank you. So that way, that would leave me a little room to write a personal message to her and sign my name, which I wanted to do in my own handwriting. Everything else I wanted Cricut to do because Cricut has much nicer handwriting than I do. But I did want it to be personalized with my own signature. So, okay, the next oopsie that I ran into after the first one I talked about earlier was that I just thought I'm going to take my Elmer's glue and squeeze it on the heart and plop that heart on the front of the 5x7 cardstock that I had used my ruler. Remember, I was going to use my ruler as the scoring wheel. So I have a nice 5x7 card. And as soon as I put that glue on the heart and put it on top of the cardstock that I had chosen, the beautiful orange cardstock, I was like, oh no. What ended up happening is I used way too much Elmer's. I used a lot of glue and I ended up with a bubbly mess on the orange cardstock bubbled, my heart bubbled. So that was a fail. That was a good learning experience for me, but the bummer was I had no more of my beautiful orange cardstock on hand, and I want to make sure this card is ready for Monday when I go back to work. So plan B was to use an off-white cardstock, again with the pink heart that said thank you on it, which Cricut wrote with my fine point pens. And then on the inside to have for your generosity and kindness. So after learning that lesson with the Elmer's, I decided I should probably try the Elmer's Craft Adhesive. It is a shaking can of more of an aerosol glue. It does have a very strong smell, and you need to be well ventilated if you're in a small space, just because I used a tiny amount and still you could smell the chemicals pretty strong. The good news is that worked really well, and I had no bubbling, and it attached my flowers, the base of the flowers down, and then I layered different color flowers. And for that, I did go back to using the Elmer's glue, the good old white Elmer's glue. I just learned to use a tiny bit, a little bit, a dot, not a ton like I did the first time I tried. So that was a definite learning curve for me. For my crafting keepers for this project, big crafting keeper. I saw this again on a tutorial. After you use your Cricut machine to cut out the cardstock, and actually probably you could use this for other materials too, I don't know. You turn over your Cricut mat with the whole cardstock still attached, and you peel the mat away from the cardstock. So what ends up happening is your Cricut mat ends up bending into like a little roll, and it leaves your cardstock flat. And the reason that is a huge crafting keeper is because, especially with cardstock, once it gets bent or rolled, for me, I have not had a lot of luck with it flattening it back out. So if the Cricut mat is what is being curved and peeled away from the cardstock, you end up with that cardstock being flat. And then whatever tiny little pieces were left, I would use my spatula to scrape it off. So that spatula is another crafting keeper when you're working with things that might get bent, or the tiny little pieces that are getting stuck on the mat and you don't want them to bend, but you want to use them for your design. Get that spatula out. It's an awesome little tool. I'm going to say using the ruler as a scoring tool. Obviously, this being my first very simple card, I realize there is probably a very good time and place to be using a scoring wheel. But for my purpose, the ruler worked just fine. So that's a keeper for me until I get a little more complicated with the things that I'm making card-wise. I also learned no globbing glue during card making. Your materials need either a different adhesive, which could be my problem, could be something to investigate. What do the real card makers, crafters, when they're making cards, use for adhesive on tiny little pieces? That's something I need to investigate. But no globbing of the white Elmer's glue. That is a crafting keeper. I did want to just share that making this simple card gave me a Satiscrafttion rating of 4. It was such a feel-good project with so much inspiration behind it that it really sent me into making 2 more cards a Mother's Day card, which came out beautiful, a little more complicated with an owl, and a retirement card for my boss that has been working with me for the last 15 years. So look for those pictures on my social media and in the website. And I look forward to my next crafting adventure with you. Bye.
That's all for this episode of Weekend Crafting Adventures. Now go get that Cricut machine off the shelf and get crafty. For more information on this crafting project, interesting tips, tricks, and techniques, visit wcapodcast.com. Until next time, when we embark on another adventure.